Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Valeria. I'm marketing manager at TechMagic, and we are a software development and cybersecurity company. And today we're going to talk about AI in cloud security, where it can help, where it can create some risks. And it's not going to be, I'm sorry, we have some technical issues, as I said, as always. So we're going to talk about AI and cloud security. And it's not going to be a lecture or prepared script, just a conversation between our speakers, people who work with cloud, with security, and now with AI day to day. So please welcome our speakers today. It will be Tony Della Fuente, founder and CEO at Prowler, Christoph Limpeler, founder at Cyber, and lead security engineer at TechMagic, Igor Sasavets. Thank you guys for joining us today. And before we start, quick note to our attendees. You can ask your questions in chat, and we will answer them during this webinar. And also you will see some polls with questions. Please answer them. It will help us to understand better our audience and your challenges. From my side, that's it. I wish all of us a great event, a great conversation, full of useful information. Now I pass a word to Igor. He will be our host today. So guys, please, you can start, and good luck.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for the introduction. I believe that many of our attendees were waiting for this event because, probably everyone is talking about AI. They integrate this into different processes, from coding to testing to some cloud to infrastructure and so on. And today we are going to take a closer look at the actually cloud and infrastructure side and how AI can either empower your team or maybe introduce new risks. Together with me, we have two known experts in this area. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. If you guys, as Valeria mentioned, have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will try to cover them. And from the start, probably as a common question, or I believe questions that actually is included in many events. So Tony, Christopher, what about common AI security myths you are most often hearing? Like AI helped us to improve our productivity 10 times. We managed to reduce our backlog to 5% of all the issues. We managed to detect and actually unveil maybe many of the attacks on our infrastructure. So what are the common things you are hearing about AI and cloud, and actually what is your thoughts on this? So maybe Tony, you can start.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I love this topic and I always love to talk about this. Thanks for the invite, by the way. Of course, probably the big myth or the most important myth of AI is AI insecurity is like, okay, we don't need AI security people, right? AI is going to replace security people, and I think it's the other way around. It's like we use AI to attack, but we use AI to defend, and it's another tool. It's a very important and powerful tool, but I don't think it's directly going to replace, but to help, right?
Christoph, what about you?
Yeah, echoing what Tony said, it's kind of difficult to know right now, because on the one hand, I see what people are saying and talking about, because I see it being able to do a lot more of what I used to do myself, or what my team of contractors might be doing. And now it's able to automate a lot of that. But it almost seems like in some ways that actually increases your workload even more if you want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because at some point everybody's going to have a relatively level playing field. So it's almost like you actually need more help in getting all those things pushed forward. But so yeah, not to throw any vendors under the bus or anything like that, but I've kind of become even more skeptical in some ways, because like even just yesterday I was looking at a specific vendor and they're like, we can give you vulnerability scans and there are going to be 0 false positives, and that's thanks to AI. And I'm like, okay, that's a really, really big claim. Let's actually see if that's real or not. And if that's real, then that's fantastic. But there's just so many claims like that that are being thrown out. And then when you actually try to use that tool in your own environments or whatever, it doesn't necessarily pan out exactly like that. So I do see a lot of those myths that are definitely just a lot of the hype around AI, and it sounds so exciting, and this model is just really just next level and it's going to completely change everything. And maybe it is a very, very good model, but it's not completely replacing all security jobs like Tony was saying. So that's probably some of the bigger myths that I've been seeing lately. But at the same time, I don't know what 12 months from now is going to look like. So maybe some of that will actually end up happening 12 months from now. Who knows?
Actually, in my work, I often hear from the customer, so why I should pay you for the pen testing, not to like hire some AI-powered company, so they will conduct me probably exactly the same pen test. They will deliver me a nicely looking report with all the issues, and that's also why do I need hire your team. But actually, when it comes to like more details, you see that that's not that easy, and they can be mistaken about what they are thinking about, and probably they do not know about the reality. For example, okay, if you have some dedicated testing environment, you can actually like give AI this environment as a target, and actually it can attack. But what about the situation when you need to assess the production system, and actually every probably move, every every 100 of additional requests can affect the existing users, especially in the systems that are connected, and you somehow like have a centralized dashboard or shared resources. And in this way, it becomes even more important to actually have the human in the loop. So AI definitely empowers us. I like the way Jason Hedix talks about AI and how actually it can be used. So we definitely can use it to empower ourselves as experts, as specialists with some background, but we should not forget about the fact that human in the loop, in some cases, it is like critical part of the system. And actually that's something that works also for a cloud security, I believe. And by the way, probably you have heard about this recent case with Hugging Face. Is probably one of the first known attacks that was automated by AI. But in general, what can you tell about this? So because it looks fascinating, actually, probably. Yeah, we know that there were controls in place. We were able to detect some like events and actions that were triggered by this autonomous agent. But in general, how do you think? Do we expect to see more of this in the future?
Yeah, of course, that is something that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, remember I'm probably older than the four of us, so the three of you, and I can explain how I felt the first time I saw the cloud. It's kind of similar. So remember that at the very beginning of the cloud, we had infrastructure as code, right? In AWS CloudFormation at the very beginning, and I realized, and that is why I loved. By that time, I fall in love with cloud security, because it was like, okay, you can build infrastructure in minutes or seconds, when right before the cloud, right before infrastructure as code, you took to start a DNS server, like a production grade DNS server, took you 6 months, right? Like you have to go to buy the hardware, to configure the cluster, whatever, networking, etc., the data center, and then with CloudFormation or Terraform, you can build a production grade service, DNS server or web server, whatever, in minutes, right? So, and then if you can build something in minutes, you can attack something in minutes, and you have to be able to defend something in minutes. With AI, it's kind of the same paradigm, right? So if we have autonomous systems to attack and to build themselves, to improve themselves to do another attack, we should be able to do something similar for the detection and for the hardening and the defend, right? It's not that easy, because for a successful attack, you only need to do it right once, right? For a successful defense, you need to do it right in many different places. So it's a different way of work. But we need to use AI, of course, to defend and to take advantage of AI also to see, okay, if this can be possible, this is how I can prevent it. We can talk about incident response later if you guys want, and how to do and what to trust when it comes to incident response with AI. But for sure, if we see attacks, successful attacks every day with AI, we need to perform successful hardening and defend with AI as well.
Yeah, Tony, I would definitely like to hear your thoughts on the incident response side and defensive side, and hear kind of how you're seeing either you guys are handling it internally, or also some of your clients are handling it, and getting some thoughts on that. So in terms of the Hugging Face breach, there's also earlier this year, I think it was around March, April, seemed like everybody's CI/CD pipelines were getting hacked, and you had stuff like HackerBot Claw that were just going and autonomously 24/7 scanning public repositories on GitHub, and then finding a way to sneak into their CI/CD pipelines, and then exfiltrating keys, and then being able to remotely execute code. But yeah, if audience members, if you haven't heard about the Hugging Face breach, definitely go check it out after this. Just the quick TLDR was that they had somebody be able to submit malicious data sets that were able to abuse their data processing pipeline and remotely execute code through that. And then because it was fully autonomous, whatever LLM harness was performing the attack was able to just completely hammer their system. I think they said at some point they had 17,000 requests within a very short time span that were just looking for weak paths, looking to be able to move laterally through the network, and they ended up successfully doing that and getting access to credentials and other things like that. So like Tony was saying, it's happening so much faster. All of that can happen within seconds or minutes, whereas before it might have taken somebody multiple minutes to hours, or potentially even weeks, depending on the complexity and their skill set. These LLMs are able to do it really, really quickly. So how do you defend against that? And what does that actually mean, both on the red teaming side and on the blue teaming side? So happy to share some thoughts on that, Tony, both of you actually, if you want to hear more on that, or if you had any specific questions, we can dive into it too.
There was an interesting article by Eden Elvares about from like initial foothold to complete takeover of the account in 60 seconds, or like similar title. And in this article, he described how actually agent can help you to overtake the cloud account actually very fast and perform all the enumerations, all the like similar stuff that we used to work on and actually we used to conduct. But with the help of AI, it becomes a lot faster, as you mentioned. Thousands of requests, they are submitted almost simultaneously, and the only blocker is your like network bandwidth and actually opportunities of your hardware. And actually, if you're talking about IAM privilege escalation, I know that in cyber you are working a lot on different labs, training material. So if you're talking about like current state in like privilege escalation, especially related to IAM services in the cloud, so Christoph, what can you tell about this? How it's changed? What are the main trends here, and actually what we need to look for in from perspective of probably attacker? If we are talking about cloud environment, we got a foothold. Let's say we got some credentials that were committed by someone in the public repo, and what's next? What would be our steps?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So for a little bit of extra background for audience members that may not be familiar with what we do at Cyber, we have a lot of one-click deploy hands-on labs, and like Ihor mentioned, we have a lot that are specific to cloud IAM privilege escalation attacks. So you're able to go in, deploy an AWS environment that has purposefully weak resources or IAM policy configurations, whatever the case may be, and using those credentials, how do you escalate privileges within our cloud environments and cloud accounts? So it's a very unique type of use case where most organizations are trying to keep threat actors outside of their environments. We purposefully bring in threat actors within our cloud environments. And I think that's kind of a unique sort of challenge, because how do you defend against that? How do you protect your environments? And what does that look like, especially with autonomous AI agents? So one of the more recent things that I've noticed, and this has come from not only the Hugging Face breach that's been publicized, and who knows how many others have not been publicized, but also from being able to build my own internal multi-agent AI harnesses to try and attack my own environments in this way. As you have models like Fable, Kimi K3, a bunch of the other ones that are just recently coming out that are getting smarter and smarter, the problem that we're now facing is that before this, the privilege escalation attacks, especially using LLMs, were kind of just one-to-one, meaning that it either figured out how to attack that path with just a few different requests, or it just said, I can't do it. There's nothing weak here. There's no vulnerability. Now you're seeing LLMs that are able to chain attack paths. So it might find an entry point in this way. It'll chain another attack, chain another attack, and just keep going until it figures it out. And it doesn't rest. It's not like a human being that gets bored of the project or gets tired or has to go sleep. You can run these things 24/7. So they just keep hammering your systems over and over again until they find that entry point. And if they truly can't find that entry point, then they pivot to trying a different approach and getting creative. It's like having a team of 20 different really smart attackers that you've hired and told them to look at it from a different perspective. So that's kind of scary, right? And I think that's one of the main reasons that models like Mythos, marketing stuff aside, are probably being held back, because they're getting better at doing this, and a lot of businesses just are not prepared for those sorts of threats. So happy to talk a little bit more about that. But Tony, what are your thoughts on that so far?
Yeah, I mean, identity is every time the problem, right? And even with when we talk about identity or IAM in major cloud providers, it's kind of easy to understand. I mean, it's never easy, but we are living in a world full of clouds. So this is no longer a land of AWS. This is no longer a land of Azure, right? This is a land of multiple places where now you are deploying your applications or your workloads using multiple places, right? So for example, your access is in an Entra ID in Azure, but your workload is in Google Cloud, and you have something else in AWS. But we can go even further. So you have probably your code in GitHub in a private repo, and you have your infrastructure as code in another different repo. So you are using multiple clouds and multiple access or multiple identities to access those clouds from each other. So that is super, super hard for humans to control, right? So that is why to get control on every single piece of your applications or of your workloads is key, and that is very, very hard. So taking control of the identity from within the organization is key, of course, to avoid opening your attack surface. AI can help with that, of course, with tools, but for the attackers, I think in that particular case, for the attackers, it's a little bit easier. But the same way you mentioned, Christoph, the agents with LLMs, they can do a lot of things because you can chaining actions and actions and actions, try and error. We should do the same with defending the cloud, right? Using agents to defend. I'm not talking about auto-remediation or self-remediation or touching production or anything, but at least to detect and then promote and accelerate the remediation. So, and we should be able to do the same with the same tools. I mean, of course, you are not attacking, you are not defending with Nuclei, right? For example, or with any agent using multiple scripts, multiple tools now. But we should be able to defend using the same methodology, at least the same army, let's say that way.
That's interesting, and we have like not a question probably a statement from our audience that an automated response system that actually is powered by AI is definitely something interesting, but trusting an AI agent to do that is not there. So Tony, I know that Prowler has a new feature that actually helps to visualize actually all the possible attack paths. Christoph also mentioned why it is important to understand potential vectors of attack. And in terms of probably experience from the side of Prowler, maybe from your own experiment, so incident response and in general, you as let's say you are a person that want to understand your cloud security posture, and you are managing not just one account as a hobbyist or a small startup, but you have like 10, 20 and so on. What are the main insights where you should start on? What are the biggest like areas to investigate, even with the help of AI? What is your experience on this?
Yeah, before AI, I remember, I mean, for those that they are not aware of Prowler, I started Prowler 10 years ago when the cloud was starting kind of, right? And only a few tools we had back in 2016. Now, of course, it's a multi-cloud with AI, etc. So everything has changed a lot, but not the problems. The security issues are, in many cases, the same issues. And in other cases, of course, as we can see with AI, a new type of attack vectors, etc. But AI for incident response is super helpful, at least for understanding, right? I remember back in the days of, I think it was Prowler 2. I don't know that there was a big incident of an AWS service, and we asked people, hey, you have run Prowler, sort by severity, and that is what you got, right? And that is probably, I mean, expose RDS or whatever. Now, with the cloud exploding in terms of usage and in terms of multi-clouds, etc., AI is very, very helpful to automate the understanding, right? So you can actually get multiple reports from multiple sources and see what's going on and what's the most important issue that is happening in your cloud or clouds. That is great for the very first minutes of an incident. You know, when you have an incident, unless you are working on incident response every day, you're probably going to become very, very nervous, and it's hard to make decisions. So AI is going to help you a lot on that at the very beginning, to summarize what happened, right, and correlate logs eventually, right, to do all that stuff. But not for the containment, not to touch production, right? So read-only stuff is good. We can trust for read-only stuff, as I said, for correlation, triage, and to kind of understand. But when it comes to containment, when it comes to recovery, etc., the AI can help you with ideas. Of course, with code, we can talk about code later, but don't let your AI do your job if you want to keep the job, right? And the company running, because probably the containment is going to be worse than anything else. We tried, I mean, we have, at Prowler, you can find in our repo, proof of concepts of making an autonomous engineer, like detecting and remediating. So for example, you can tell Prowler, hey, with a plugin, it's open source plugin for Claude Code. Hey, detect everything that you detect that is making my CIS not compliance, right? CIS level 2, level 1, whatever. Fix it. No question asked. It works, and it can make it. Should you do it in production? Of course not. It's a good exercise to learn. It's a very good exercise, right? So AI can do that. Should we let AI doing that? I don't think so. Not yet, at least.
And actually, probably one point from perspective of an attacker, and not just attacker, but probably teams that manage a lot of resources, especially when you onboard new team members. There are a lot of situations when someone just creates resources in other operational region, for example, and because you are do not expect to have some resources there, you are lack of monitoring, and if you do not have some strong practices in place, you probably will miss those resources, and attackers can also use this. And actually, so Christoph, maybe if you were an attacker and your goal was to conduct probably like establish its way to access the infrastructure to have some kind of backdoor. So would you use this way, or maybe there with the help of AI, everything is visible, everyone knows who are doing what, and actually in the same way, or now we still have a lot of issues and stuff to learn?
In terms of, do you mean like if I were an attacker and trying to set up a backdoor and say an AWS
Yep.
environment or something like that, would I use a different region or like have the backdoor techniques change? No, I mean, yes and no. No, in the sense that the techniques haven't changed, right? The cloud platforms still operate the same way that they have for 10 plus years at this point. But to Tony's point that he made a little bit earlier, some of that creativity changes, because if it's just me trying to figure out how to set up a backdoor, I only have my own creativity. But the moment I bring in an LLM, it's going to bring in different kinds of ideas and creativity. And it might have an idea for a backdoor that I never thought to use. Like just the other day, I was working on a brand new hands-on lab, and the LM was like, well, why don't you use this? I was like, yeah, I've never done this in my labs before. Why don't I use that? Right. So it could help in that regard, but I'm not inventing something new on the AWS side. I'm just thinking outside the box, quote unquote, thanks to that LLM helping me do that. So yes and no, I guess, would be the answer to that question.
And that's interesting because, you know, yeah, techniques are the same, but now they are scaled. So if previously, for example, for some kind of maybe script kiddies, or let's call them so, they were need to Google some stuff, maybe use some frameworks like Paco, like CloudFox, and so on, to just understand what can be done, what are the operational regions, what are their boundaries that they can operate, and then try to move forward. And now they are empowered by AI, and everyone can know how to like structure their way, how to maybe with a little bit of social engineering to convince AI that they are trying to secure their own cloud, because we know that OpenAI and Anthropic and other vendors, they are trying to implement protections and verifications to ensure that you are doing like legitimate kind of stuff, but it's also work in progress. And now still many people, with the help of different tricks, because with AI, and especially when they are talking about social engineering approach, there are so many ways on how you can reliably detect some of the attacks. Probably you both know those posts in LinkedIn where people just trying to say something not harmful to the Claude Fable 5, and actually they were immediately downgrade to another model just because the model thought it was something offensive. And it's actually the trend, because more and more people, they are complaining that actually they were asked to provide their IDs, they were asked to actually prove their identity, and so on. So we are definitely seeing, like, I would say, this shift from like traditional mindset. Yeah, attacks are the same, but they are scaled. And especially if you are running some kind of bug bounty, it's really visible, because 1 year ago you can actually, you was able to get like above 5 reports per weekend and so on. Now you are getting 5 times more, and more they are automated. And actually, yeah, monitoring, detection, and triage of these things is pretty important. And probably triage and determining what's happened, who did that, and so on, was one of the probably most challenging questions, especially in large environments. And now AI helps to structure this, but maybe are there any things that are still needing development? So Tony, what are your thoughts on this? Do we have blind spots that we should work on in terms of detection?
There is, unfortunately, always we have blind spots. What we try, at least in a company like, in a product like Prowler, or a company like us, is to cover the most important services and the most common services. Of course, with that, you reduce a big percentage of issues. The problem sometimes is not only about what you can protect, it's also about what the cloud provider is delivering all the time. So the cloud is a live environment, not only because the applications can scale up, scale down, all the stuff, but because the providers are adding services and features inside services all the time. It's part of their business, right? And to take care of that is really, really hard. I don't know, some of you may know GitHub repo that is publishing automatically every time that AWS has a new action. That means something that you can do, right, in AWS. It's part of the IAM ecosystem. And that is only AWS. Because AWS is kind of transparent on everything that they do, right? It's kind of easy to detect what they are doing, even looking at the Boto 3 new add-ons and different places, right? But again, it's kind of impossible to catch up with everything that all the cloud providers are doing. So blind spots are always there. What we have to do is to minimize them. And can AI help on that? I think it can. In our case, we create controls all the time, not only not manual controls directly, because it's part of the deterministic database of detection, remediations, compliance, all that stuff, but also you can build controls automatically to run them in your cloud or against your cloud. Of course, this is agentless for every cloud. So we are heading a time where we can probably going to be able to write controls as the new services come, but at the same time that generates noise. And also with AI, we can reduce the noise, but it's it's a continuous evolution. It's going to, so the short answer is yes, there are always blind spots. The long answer is that we are working towards a place where we have controls for everything, but it's not easy, and it's not super fast.
That's right. Christoph, what are your thoughts on this?
In terms of blind spots for defending, or on the offensive side, like
well, in terms of blind spots for defense, and maybe it's not only about the detection, but also about the notification, and especially not every team can afford to have a dedicated 24/7 SOC team that actually will be able to react to all the security events inside their cloud accounts. And when we are talking about blind spots, and when we are talking about issues with availability, issues with continuous monitoring, so how can AI fit into this gap? How it can, like, maybe not completely fix and mitigate, but at least helps to improve these processes and reduce the blast radius, with some critical actions that should be taken first.
Yeah, in some ways, I almost feel like the traditional blue team versus red team and having clear separation between their responsibilities and what they're doing is starting to blur a little bit. Like, you still have very different skill sets required for both. But if you have the defensive side, and the defensive side is really only concerned with checking boxes on what are the best practices, like how do I deploy to AWS following best practices, I think they're going to have major problems here in the very, very near future, versus if they start to realize, wait a minute, I need to also set up systems using LLMs that can attack my environments and attack my defenses to see what's going on. That's easier and more realistic to do than it's ever been before. Like, in the past, you would have to hire these expensive teams. They'd have to come in, you'd set up the engagement. It's a long, drawn out process. If you're only doing that now, you're going to have those blind spots that you and Tony were just talking about. Instead, you really have to look at it and say, how can I actually test my defenses on a continuous basis, the way that a threat actor would be attacking it, aka by using autonomous agents. And if you're just not doing that, then there's definitely going to be some blind spots. I don't see any other way around it. So I don't know if that's the best way to say it, that line between the two teams is blurring, right? It's still two different functions. You still have two very different skill sets. And I'm not saying red teams are going away or anything like that, but I think a lot of the blue teams need to start taking on some of that responsibility as well and attack their own defenses on a more continuous basis.
And that's a great point, because as you mentioned, probably like old ways may still work, but not in the same way as it was previously. And we should like rethink our approach to security. We should embed security from the like early start of any feature. And if you're talking about teams that mostly are, because we know that there are like some kind of distribution between DevOps, DevSecOps, like SecOps and so on, cloud security. But if you're talking about like general teams that has some kind of developers, QA engineers, and DevOps engineers that are managing cloud infrastructure, and they want to improve their defenses, they want to start at least from some point, then probably, and they have access obviously to some tools like Claude Code, maybe to some GPT codec stuff and so on. So to your mind, Christopher, what would be their like first steps if they want to assess where are they now and actually what are like top actions?
I think it still just comes down to the basic fundamentals of how you would have done it in the past, meaning that you start with the threat model. Like what does our current threat model look like? Who is likely to be a threat actor, and how are they going to attack our environments? But how are they going to do that relying or looking at how they did it against Hugging Face, right? Now that we know, and a lot of people are talking about the attacks with AI agents, what they're going to look like in the future. A lot of that was more just ideas and theoretical. Now we're seeing it in the real world. So how do we apply that to our current threat model? One great example, and this is something that I think about a lot as well for my own environments, is a couple of the key highlights from the Hugging Face case study was talking about just the fact that they were able to use swarms of these sandbox environments and also self-migrating command and control. And so once the agent is like, okay, I've got a vulnerability or I've got an entry point into this system, it's able to go to all these vendors and providers, serverless, not serverless VMs, whatever edge functions, CDNs, all these different surfaces that the agent can just spread out to and literally just swarm your endpoints. How do you defend against something like that? Like what does that look like? Well, the best way to find out is to do it against a safe, isolated environment and see how your system responds. See what your incident response systems are detecting and not detecting. Because one of the weak points of that type of attack is just the sheer volume of noise that it generates. It's not as surgical as if you have a human going in that really knows what they're doing, and that's just targeting specific weak points. A lot of these LLMs, they're just spamming endpoints, like we said earlier, 17,000 requests. That should start to sound some alarms. There should be something saying, hey, why are we getting 17,000 requests against these services in a 60-second period? Something's not right here. So there are ways that we can still defend against that, but how do you know that you have defenses that are going to work against that or tell you about it if you're not performing those sorts of attacks in your environments? And so you can't just wait for that yearly red team engagement to figure that out. You have to start doing some of those things now, and you have to start to see how your systems respond to that next month, not next year, right? At least that's my 2 cents on it.
And that's true. And probably my question to Tony would be, we know that there is obviously a desire to understand where you are in terms of security posture, what are your top priorities as of now. And actually, in many cases, we see that teams also want to reach some type of compliance. I know that Traveler offers different compliance checks that you can quickly assess your environment and understand how well it actually suits to some kind of compliance. But in terms of not mixing compliant and actually doing embedding some security checks, so what would be the optimal scenario for the team who wants not only to achieve some kind of compliance, but also to improve their security? And because let's say they do not have a dedicated security team, but they have access to AI tools, what would be their path to success?
Yeah, so the point is a lot of people comes to cloud security because of compliance, right? Unfortunately, and cloud security has to be scale as the company in terms of detection, remediation, and also compliance, right? But the point is, I mean, for everybody that is listening or watching us, and please understand that we are giving like generic answers because like I bet the people of Hugging Face to detect anything with thousands or millions of connections and hundreds of thousands of resources in the whatever cloud that they use, or even in their local data centers, is a different story probably, and has to be taken into a different way. But with the information that we know, is what we say, right? So for compliance, it's kind of the same. So I like to say that don't do only compliance. Of course, if you are an auditor, that is different. Okay, if you are an auditor of the ISO 27001, you have to audit based on that. But if we talk about cloud security, go beyond compliance. And if you go beyond compliance, you have a lot of compliance already achieved, right? So the key here is to know what you have, including to know what tools are you using to build anything in the cloud, and then go through every single resource, every single service that you have used on that. Of course, you can apply. We have hundreds of templates for compliance. Pretty much any compliance framework is supported in AWS for at Prowler, but also in Azure, GCP, etc. Or you can create your own, because it's very flexible and it's open source, right? But in many cases, when you see what all the products used to get, or not only CSPM but cloud security in general for compliance, are going to give you hundreds or if not thousands of findings of things you have to fix. That is a problem. That is a timing problem. That is a bandwidth problem for the team, and that is sometimes even bigger problem when you don't have cloud security people, right? Not all the companies have cloud security people, mostly because it's expensive, and second, because to know more than one cloud is almost impossible. To be expert in more than one cloud, expert, not just to know, expert. So having tools to detect what is important is very helpful. So go through the findings and use AI. That is what we offer as well, and to reduce the scope, because you cannot do everything, and also to accept some risks if you have to, or automate the remediation of those risks. The good thing of using tools like Prowler or Scout Suite or many others, right, is that at least you see what's going on, right? You see what's your gaps, and you get that. If you go farther with Prowler, you can also get the remediation plan. You can get a lot of help on that. But I will say that, okay, go through compliance, but go to a deeper cloud security before going compliance, and also into the maturity level of your company. AWS has this, Azure has also those, how they call them, the well-architected framework, right? Or something similar to the well-architected framework, and recommends you how you have to operate the cloud. If I can say something that, remember, a lot of people probably know that I used to work for AWS, and I had a very good time at AWS, but it's something that I don't necessarily agree, which was back in the days of the lift and shift, I think it was the name, when everybody, yeah, it was like, okay, whatever you do, put it into the cloud, and then you will adapt it. So that was the root of a lot of security issues, because there is you cannot operate an application same way in the cloud and in your local data center for many different reasons that probably we all know, right? That was a big issue, and there are still some cloud providers, new niche cloud providers, that they are asking for the same, just for the sake of selling, right? And that it makes everything even harder when it comes to the cloud. I understand the business. Okay, I run a business, so I'm not blaming, but for us, that we are security people, we need to think about that first.
That's right. And actually, you mentioned well-architected framework, and actually, I had the chance to be among early users of AWS Kiro, and actually it was great experience because now I see this ecosystem of different MCP servers with access to AWS documentation, with all that stuff, and actually it simplifies a lot of processes because when you have this not just AI-powered IDE, but you have a specialized IDE that actually is better connected to this specific type of cloud and can actually bring you a lot of more opportunities and actually in this case, you even if you are not a security person, you still have access to this, let's say, well-architected tool. You still have this security pillar, and you can go through it. So even like maybe basic assessment, because for example, let's say in Kiro, we have like hooks. And if you're doing infrastructure as a code, and many teams use this, whether in Terraform, CloudFormation, you can just maybe based on the connection to these MCP servers, let's say you can query documentation, understand what security pillar tells you to do and actually what you should comply with. And you can just create a hook, let's say, and it will scan your code base, your infrastructure as a code after every major change. I won't say that it will cover every problem that may arise in this setup, but at least you have this minimal level of security and you have minimal level of checks. So even when integrated later into like PR checks into your version control system, it can bring you additional opportunities and at least some basic stuff, let's say level 1, you can easily reach it and you do not need to have a dedicated security person. But obviously, when we talk about situation when we are managing several accounts, when we are dealing with different kind of attacks, when we just want to build not just incident response just to build it, but build it reliable, build it fast and actionable, definitely we need a person who knows how it works from inside, because actually AI tools are great, but we should remember that they are built on existing knowledge. And with times comes, actually we will see more on AI generated content, and AI will train on AI generated content. And that's actually something that my lover opportunities. But also in terms of developers that are connected to like MCP servers connected to their cloud. So we know that in the past there were a lot of attacks that were compromising like different third-party chains, different like third-party packages. And as a regular developer that is working on an application, deploying in somewhere to AWS, let's say, you probably install some packages and you didn't notice that one of the packages was compromised, because we know about a lot of incidents that happened, and actually even major packages with millions of users were compromised. So if you're talking about situation when developers actually, let's say, do not care much about their security and they were affected by this kind of attack. I mean, a vulnerable third-party dependency that actually after installation start to gather information about your environment, probable credentials, and so on. And you have IDE that is connected to different MCP servers, to your cloud. So from perspective of potential bad scenarios and things that we should learn from, I mean, about what we should keep in mind, how we should operate with this. So Christopher, from probably perspective of attacker, how much it would be for us easier to expand our success when we manage to get this foothold, when we manage to deliver this package, or what would be the most like dangerous steps from our perspective when we got access to all this information on local developer environment?
So I want to make sure I understand your question, but do you mean like if you have a compromised package, for example, that you're installing on your system or whatever it may be, maybe you're using a dev tool that is compromised or something like that. Are you asking like how much worse is that now that we have agents that can deploy as part of that attack, or did I misunderstand the question?
And especially when we have agents like, let's say, OpenClaw, when it is fully autonomous system, when you deployed it, you go actually set the task and you forgot about it. And the next day you see that your Stripe subscriptions just were canceled, as an example. But in this environment, what would be probably the most dangerous steps that we can expect?
I mean, the most dangerous would be that they take root access, right? Like they get complete control of the system and do whatever they want with it, and they can do that in seconds, depending on how quickly the APIs and whatnot operate. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I was reading a research paper last week, and there's an AI powered attack tool that's specifically designed to try and get root access on Linux boxes. And they had different benchmarks. This was part of a research project, obviously. And so they had different benchmarks, and the fastest they were able to have this agent get root access on a Linux box was 13 seconds. So from initially gaining access to the Linux box to having complete root access of that Linux box was 13 seconds. Now, obviously, that was the best case scenario. Most of the other scenarios that they had put together took a little bit longer than that. But the big question that I don't have an answer for today is, how do you respond to that? How do you respond as a defender with that speed and that specificity, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of the models that a lot of us are using, I was looking in chat, a lot of us are using Anthropic models, OpenAI models, things like that. A lot of those have safeguards. So even if you want to try and use that in your defense pipeline, and you go, hey, Fable, hey, GPT 5.6, something just got root access that wasn't authorized. Can you take a look? And they go, sorry, can't help you with that. So how do you get around that, right? I don't have a great answer for that, apart from just fix your vulnerabilities, and which is not helpful in the least, but also have a contingency plan, just like, and I keep bringing it back to Hugging Face. And by the way, to echo what Tony was saying, I don't bring it back to Hugging Face to say that they did a bad job. I think they did a phenomenal job. Could they have improved? Probably, just like all of us can. But I think they reacted super well to this. And one of the things that they did that was fantastic, in my opinion, is they were able to pivot to GLM, and they were able to self-host it, which many of us can't do, unfortunately, due to the financial costs. But they were able to pivot to a self-hosted model that didn't have those safeguards. So they were able to respond to this attack as quickly as the attack was unfolding, or close to it. A lot of us can't do that. So I'm still trying to figure out, like, what would I do in that situation? How would I respond as quickly as the attack is unfolding? And I don't know, maybe Tony has a better answer on how to do that than I do, but that's a big question mark for me.
I mean, now with what's going on with AI, what's going to happen with AI are a lot of question marks, right? We don't really know what's going on and what's going to happen in many fronts. But talking a little bit about the issue you mentioned during the issue, for example, with Trivi and with others. We used Prowler uses Trivi underneath to scan containers, code, etc. So it's another library for Prowler, right? And like many other tools or libraries. I can explain what we did and how we do stuff when to prevent that to happen. First is, of course, to scan everything all the time in terms of when it comes to building software. So for the attendees, I'm talking about the way we build Prowler, or the way anybody can build a piece of software that you distribute. To have a proper guardrails in place in your repository, and so like proper everything control under the GitHub Actions, all the tests, to see every single line of code if it's going to include anything in your code base. That is key when you create software, even if it's open source. If it's open source, it's even more important. But if it's for your own application, is key as well. I remember, like a year ago or something, it was a report of the most secure and less secure open source projects in terms of configuration for GitHub Actions, controls, etc. You can get the list of. I'm not going to say this is not going to happen to Prowler, because you never know. But we put in place everything that is available. Literally everything that is available, and including with that, sometimes we can find in our containers a library that is obsolete and has a 20 2019 vulnerability that is like CVE6, and it's not exploitable because you are not even using that functionality in that library, but it is there. So that is very, very hard. But at least try to catch the most important parts. Of course, do not merge into your repo, into your code, anything just because it looks good. So do deep research, use AI. We use AI tools and everything in order to detect if every single line of code that comes to Prowler is secure, including libraries. What we did with Trivi, though, was we identified the issue in which version, because that was in a branch, and then that was merged. We always do that with big portions of tools inside Prowler, and we always be tied to a specific tag. So in our case, didn't affect us because the vulnerable version was a different version, and we realized that that was a good practice, right? Okay, use one version at a time, and wait. I mean, don't use any version the day after is a release. We do releases every day or every other day. We try, of course, to not to add vulnerabilities, but we know that we add bugs because it's software, right? And even with AI, you are adding bugs all the time. But coming back to the vulnerability of the cybersecurity side, there are many different guardrails that you can put in place in your software to prevent, or at least 99% of supply chain attacks. And there is a lot of open source tools. Of course, we do that at Prowler as well, but there are many different tools to protect your repo, your code, and follow best practices. So that's what we have to do when we defend, right? Of course, to get to know the attack vectors and to get to know how the bad actors are doing stuff, but covering all the good practices that we can.
A lot of useful insights. Probably one also important trend that I see, for example, when you have a large environment with a lot of different, let's say, ECS containers, EC2 instances, and you enable your AWS inspector for the first time, and you actually did not experience it previously, so you just think that, okay, I will enable it and it will do the job. It will find me everything that is vulnerable. It will highlight me the most probable execution and exploitation paths, and that's it. But in reality, many teams are facing situations when they enable this service for all the accounts at once, and they are just flooded with the amount of vulnerabilities, amount of issues, and they just do not know where to start. In some cases, they just decide, let's close it, let's it shut down, because we have a lot of problems. We know about them, but let's close because we cannot manage them. But obviously, if there are some vulnerabilities, we should at least ensure that such characteristic as reachability, because in many scanners like SNCC, you also mentioned Trivi, one of the important facts is not the fact that the vulnerability exists, but is it reachable from your code, from your infrastructure, and that is what differs actually real vulnerability from just probably not a noise, but amount of issues that are not so important for your team. And if you're talking about like large scale of issues, we saw in the past that Amazon are working with Anthropic to actually use the latest models like Mythos to secure their infrastructure, to actually reveal some new issues in the software. But it also produces a lot of new vulnerabilities that we should handle. And if you, like Tony, if you were a security engineer or cloud security engineer assigned to probably enable and container scanning and EC2 scanning in the cloud, actually with the help of inspector, what would be your success path for this to not be overloaded with amount of issues, but at the same time to build efficient systems that can answer questions like, are we vulnerable? What are our top priorities? And actually, what are the stuff that we should skip? Because as of now, it does not affect us.
I think the answer for that is attack path, right? Or what others call toxic combinations. Is like, okay, if you have container with vulnerabilities running in a very, very, very deep layer of your infrastructure, and it's not even facing the internet whatsoever. So it's less important. I know it's important, but it's less important than an application facing the internet with an SSH open to the internet and vulnerable, right? That you can find in Shodan, or you can find in Census or whatever, right? So the attack surface is key. The attack path is key to understand what is the first thing I have to do. And AI helps a lot on that because it's great for correlation, right? Is it perfect? Probably not perfect, depending on how you train that AI or how do you provide information. If you provide information with a proper format and provide context, etc., it can be a good friend on detecting the most important stuff, and that is key. So we use that now. So at the very beginning of cloud security detection, it was a matter of sorting by severity, right? And now it's like, okay, now tell me what is exposed to the internet and why this is important. And also even run this or that nuclei template or even just an nmap or whatever, like a recon tool in order to get to know if that is exploitable or not. We can do that now not very easy, but easier than before, right? And to correlate. So that is, of course, that is AI, as we said, is an advantage for attackers, for blue teams, but for red teams, but it's also very, very helpful for us when it comes to go and do only what you have to do today, right? And that is something that we are doing now at Prowler. It's key nowadays because, as you said, as the more clouds you have, more findings you have, but not necessarily everything is vulnerable or everything is exploitable. You need to know different things in your infrastructure, from misconfiguration, but also what if I have PII in this S3 bucket? But if I don't have PII, it's not like I don't care. I do care, but less, right? So different components with different tools or with the same tools, different features can help you building that. Yeah, attack path is the short answer. The TLDR.
Obviously, and attack path is something that can be also used like by defenders, but from perspective of attackers. So when you try to understand how you can exploit it by yourself, and you can then enumerate some probably the worst case scenario. So Christoph, maybe you trying to experiment with it yourself. I mean, when you have AI tool, when you have, let's say, some kind of dependency, vulnerable dependency, and you want to understand, is it affect your environment? Can it be exploited? What are prerequisites? So what are your thoughts on this? Actually, does it AI, how much AI change this? I mean, efforts for detection, efforts for understanding exploitation paths, and the actual execution of the attack.
It's changed everything for me because I'm a team of one, right? I mean, I work with contractors here and there as well, but it's very different when you're a larger organization versus a very, very small organization like mine, because when you have findings that are either coming externally, somebody's submitting a bug report, or whether it's something internally, like you said, Amazon Inspector, Guard Duty, whatever the case may be, or even my own agent harnesses that are finding issues, when it's generating that amount of data, or even just looking at a Prowler report, which I do on a periodic basis, it's how do I prioritize all of this work that you just gave me from these findings when I don't have that much time? And this is potentially important stuff. So, and this is getting better and better over time, and I love doing this. But as an example, let's say that Ihor, you submit a bug report and you say, hey, I ran a vulnerability scan or whatever, I found this issue on your public facing application or your hands on lab platform. What I can do is I can pass that on to an agent, and that agent can create an end-to-end POC, proof of concept, that tries to determine whether it's an actual issue or not. And so a lot of times I get these bug reports and I appreciate them. So if you find stuff, please send them over. I'm happy to take a look at them. But a lot of times they're just, they're noise. They're not actual stuff that will have any effect. They look bad because they're part of the OWASP top 10 or whatever. But if I actually try to create a POC for it, it's not something that that can be acted on. It's not something, or even if it is something that can be acted on, it's not something that's going to have any sort of material impact on my customers, my platform, or anything like that. Maybe it's something I should look at fixing down the road, but it's really not a high priority issue at this point in time. And agents can help you POC that. They can help you triage it and figure out, this is actually worth your time looking at, this is not worth your time looking at. Now, will they make mistakes? Of course. Will humans make mistakes doing the exact same tasks? Absolutely. What I'm trying to determine is how often they make mistakes with that, and compare that to how much time and effort they save me, and then just go from there. So for a team like mine, a team of one, that's been an absolute game changer, and I'm constantly trying to improve that process. For if you're talking about enterprise level, that's probably a little bit different, and those teams are going to move a lot slower in implementing those kinds of approaches because there's a lot more at stake, and they have a lot more hands in the pot that can help with that. So it just, yeah, long story short, it's been fantastic for me. I love it.
That's great. I totally agree with you in terms of like detection and triaging of the vulnerabilities, because you get a lot of reports, but in many cases you receive, as you mentioned, we found like super critical high issues that actually will blow your entire organization. You are under the big risk, you should respond now and so on. But when you take a closer look, you understand that it's not that a big deal, because yeah, maybe it is issue, it's some kind of misconfiguration vulnerability, but still it has less impact on your system, and the person from outside your organization who does not know the internals, they are just not aware that it does not work in this way. So the issue can be presented, but not some in such a big impact. And if you're talking about, because during this session, we mentioned a lot of how AI agents, how in general AI can help us in detection, in maybe prioritization, triaging, blue team activities. But if you're talking about some kind of skills for humans, for human operators, and if you're talking about like red team side, I mean, assessing cloud security and so on. So to your mind, Christopher, what are the key skills that you should have, at least as of now, because we know how fast the things are going to change, but at least as of now, what would be like top skills that you would look at in the potential candidate?
A human candidate for doing a security job or cloud job, or?
Yeah, cloud security job.
Yeah, I feel like that's a moving target of a question and answer. And I think about this a lot, obviously, because I run a training platform. So I get these types of questions a lot of people coming in. They're just starting off their career and they're like, am I wasting my time learning this stuff? Because am I even going to be able to get a job? And there's so much data that disagrees. I've seen reports that say that hiring has not been affected by it. And I see reports that say that entry-level job positions are down by double-digit percentages. So I get this question a lot, and I don't have a super good answer for it. But my point of view on that is the following, which is that one of two things is going to happen. Either we all lose our jobs, in which case you would have still learned valuable skills, interesting skills, something that you were able to sink your teeth into and have a great time, or we're not. And spending time learning the fundamentals is still incredibly valuable. If you don't enjoy learning the valuables in the first place, then maybe this is not the right career path for you anyway, and that's perfectly fine, right? But have fun with it. Just learn how the cloud works, learn how application security works, whatever you're interested in, learn the fundamentals of it. And even if that layer of skills ends up being completely abstracted away by AI agents, you can still build on top of it. And you can keep going with that. I don't think it's ever a waste of time to really try to learn how things work and tinker with them, and just keep working on your brain, keep trying to get smarter and smarter, keep building skills, and either it will work out or it's going to be a place where we all are out of jobs anyway, and maybe you wasted your time, but I don't think it would have been a waste of time. I think you would have had fun with it anyway. So I don't know if that directly answers your question or not, or if you had a follow up for that, but that's my 2 cents on that situation.
And that's totally true, because AI changes a lot, but we still should learn. We still should keep our like ability to think, our ability to architect, and now it is even more about architecting a solution, not just executing it, because you have AIs that can write a code, it can test it, but you should architect the solution, you should think about threat modeling and so on. And if you're talking about probably blue team skills, I mean skills that are required to detect, to defend cloud environments in the modern world, taking into account all the AI stuff. So Tony, what would be your short list of skills actually that people should learn, should focus on to stay in demand?
Of course, I subscribe what Christoph has said on the foundations of the basics that in the cloud are not that basic, but to understand the why and how the different services work is key in order to understand how internet is working and beyond the cloud. But fast forward to nowadays, how to build stuff nowadays and how to take advantage of the latest technology to get protected. I will say that learn one or two AI-driven IDEs, right? Like Claude Code, Codex, whatever. Get to know how to connect agents, how to make agentic workflows and automations around that, because pretty much everything that we are doing now is using agents, right? I mean, not in all corporations. I know internet and the world is super big, and is in our case, in probably some small company, we are all embracing the latest things, and not in all companies this is happening. But if you want to take advantage of the latest, do things like the latest, right? Do AI-related development or both, pen testing or red teaming, blue teaming. Get to know how to get information from any agentic system and secure stuff using that way. So yeah, I would say use Claude Code, for example, connect an MCP, multiple MCPs, multiple tools, configure automations, and pull data from here, from there to make decisions. That will be key. And understand how things are built. The AI is not going to replace us directly, but it's going to help us, right? And we can build. I mean, we don't really code nowadays, but we are a big reviewers of, or at least builders of the automation around the automation. So to make sure that you are not adding new vulnerabilities, to make sure you are deploying something and testing it before it's deployed, testing it in dev, in staging, and then when it's in prod, continuously monitoring. You can use AI to do all that stuff, but you have to supervise, and you have to see that if AI is doing it well, right? I mean, this is pretty basic, but we need to be on top, knowing how to be on top.
There's a really good quote by the CEO of Microsoft. I don't know if you guys saw. He wrote a piece on X Twitter that was talking about some of this, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it goes something along the lines of, you can outsource your day-to-day tasks to AI, but you can't outsource your learning. And that's 100% correct. If you give up and stop learning because you think your job's going to get taken away, you're 100% correct. You will get screwed over. But if you keep learning, then you have a fighting chance. And I think that's where it's headed.
I will add, and your responsibility. So we always talk about the shared responsibility model when we talk about cloud security, right? With AI, that is still the same, even more blurry, right? Because in the cloud, it's always hard to find where is the responsibility of who. But with AI, I would add on top of that very good quote, and your responsibility. It's not only, hey, no, I did this with Codex, and then it is where it is. No, it is where it's not. It's your responsibility. It's our responsibility. I mean.
Yes, that's true, and many people just forgot about this because actually they thought that AI implemented this kind of stuff, and actually that's how it works. So why are you asking me that it works in this way? Because AI did that. And if you're talking about learning, probably one of the key things that at least I hear on different discussions, it's about learning path for the junior roles, for the trainee roles, because actually their way of learning changed, and probably now they need to transform not just from learning some just basic stuff and go step by step, but learn how to use AI at the same time to be side by side with more experienced person, and not learn how it writes the code, because now it's mostly outsourced to AI tools, but how it makes a decision, and actually why this decision worked in this way, what drives those decisions, and learn how to think. So more kind of mix or architecture, security, and foundation, because you both mentioned that foundational skills, how the internet works in general, how the packets are transmitted from one point to another, and it what makes a good foundation. And later you should understand how to use all this knowledge, still understand how to use this knowledge to make a bigger decision. And AI is your let's say friend, your coworker that can help you to achieve this goal, but you are the person who makes a decision, and you should be responsible for this decision. And AI also introduces a lot of additional stuff, because it seems that we can automate a lot, we can delegate a lot to AI, to agents, but from my own experience, you just get far more tasks to come. Even if you automated some your routine, you still get a lot of new things. And actually, if you're talking about keeping our, let's say, mental health or mental conditions out from this race, so what would be your recommendations? I mean, maybe some hobbies, maybe some manual work, just to switch the context and actually to offload your head from all this AI, all this automation, and just keep your time just to relax. So Tony, what would be your recommendations for this?
I'm probably the worst example, or the worst person to recommend anything about disconnection from work. I've been my entire career super obsessed with everything that I do, and now with Prowler, over the last 10 years, even worse. So yeah, I mean, I do running. I've done triathlon many years, and now I only do running. I try to go to the gym and out in the mountains. I live in the mountains in the south of Spain, and I try to go out for a run at least 3 times a week, or to walk my dog. But I'm still listening to podcasts of cybersecurity. So, I mean, I'm not a good example whatsoever. But yeah, get out, have a beer with friends. That helps always.
Christoph, what about you? I know that you recently got your pilot license, and it's, for me, it's a huge achievement, because I cannot imagine you should control a lot when you are in a cabin of plane, because actually a lot of things to control, and a lot about concentration, attention. So actually tell us more about this experience.
Yeah, honestly, and you hear a lot of people talking about this too, where it sometimes feels like you're what's the right way to say this, but not that your brain is rotting away, that's a little extreme, but you're in some ways, I felt like I was getting dumber, to be completely honest with you. The more I used LLMs and just chatted with them and whatnot, and just offloaded that work, it just kind of felt like I was getting dumber, which is a weird way to say it. But I was like, okay, let me do something extremely challenging I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I did, and it was extremely challenging. And it took about 5 months of very intense studying, very intense and deliberate work. And it was something that was both mentally challenging, because there's a lot of studying that goes into it, but also physically challenging, like you were saying, where your attention has to be extremely focused, but also you're constantly distracted, looking at different panels and everything. And I don't know, it helped so much in ways that I can't even fully describe, but that's helped apply into my day-to-day work as well. And in some ways, I feel like my brain is hungry for more of that learning now, and more studying, and more pushing and trying harder things. And it's just, I think it's something that's important to keep doing. And like Tony was saying too, just staying physically fit, and listening to podcasts about health, about what you're eating, about how you should be walking every single day, stretching your legs multiple times a day, using a standing desk. And so I try to apply all these things, and I try to be as healthy as I can, not just physically, but also mentally as well. And I've seen that output into the quality of my work on a daily basis. And I feel like there's been a noticeable difference. So I think it's important to do, but I certainly don't have all the answers on that. I'm not a health expert or anything, but definitely, if you have any interest in that, for sure, look it up. And I think it's well worth your time.
Because for me, probably the challenge that I was doing for the last year, it was getting my driver license. And actually, when you are driving a car, especially with the actually mechanical gear, then you are totally concentrated on what you are doing on, especially on other drivers, and you should keep away from someone that looks crazy, and you should keep yourself safe, because actually they all like trying to smash you just because you are too slow for them, but it's your first step. So it is a wonderful experience, especially pushing kids through the exam actually, and proving that you are ready to be a driver. And actually, one thing that you also mentioned, that it is important to continue evolve, continue develop our brain, our thinking condition. Then for me, it is probably chess, because actually even some challenges like make mate in 3 moves, in 4 moves, you still need to develop different scenarios, similar like you have in cloud security, in threat modeling. You have a list of steps that can be used to achieve the goal, and you should understand what is the best strategy. The same we have from the defense perspective, the same we have for offense. And actually, it's something that drives me a lot. And obviously, reading books, especially if you have some time to chill and get some good book and read, and yeah, that's truly awesome. And doing something by hand, it's what keeps me changing the context, and actually having some rest from this constant race with AI automation and all the stuff. So yeah, maybe
the level
Valeria.
of anxiety where we live now is crazy. If you are building something, it's like you have the sense of running late all the time, and you have to. I say that in first person because I feel that pain every day. I have to learn how to live with that, with the latest thing all the time, because others are building other things, and you are always running late. But yeah, it's a long learning experience, guys.
That's true. So Valeria, maybe you have something to add.
My way, it is bicycle 20 kilometers after work, 3 times per week, and I'm okay. But of course, all of us, even marketers, sometimes even more marketers, we feel all the stands, and it's cool to hear from you your advices and how you manage with all of this. As I can understand, we can finish here.
Yeah, I believe that's it. We managed to cover not all, but a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of practical recommendations, a lot of insights. We still know where to move forward, what are the key focus areas, what are some advisories aside of constant AI races and so on. So I believe this was pretty good session. So I believe that's it for today.
I believe it was awesome, really very interesting, very useful, and very honest. Thank you guys for this, for your experience, for your time. We want this more, Okay, we had several questions in chat, but we've already covered them because I didn't want to interrupt you. Thank you, Tony, and my colleague Victoria to help me with all these questions in chat. One thing I want to add, that we will share the recording via email that were used to register to this event. And of course, guys, please follow our pages on LinkedIn, TechMagic pages, Igor's pages, our special guests pages. to get all these updates about AI and cloud security and news about new events. Thank you one more time. Have a great day, evening, whatever, and hope to see you one more time.
Thank
having
you.
me.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.